Okay. More and more people are tricking in, and I think they'll slowly continue to come in as we go. But for everyone that is here, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited. This is our first ever office hours, and I'm really happy that the volunteers, Beth, Catherine, Jenny, Vicky, and everyone has been so supportive in getting this off the ground. Um, I'm really excited because I feel like this is one of the new initiatives that the company is starting to do so that we could have more supportive programs for patients in the program. It's definitely a place for positivity and for uplifting parents in the program and providing support. So with that being said, I would love to introduce you guys to our volunteers. If you'll notice up top, there's people with similar backgrounds to me. Those are the volunteers and your hosts for today. So we have Beth, Catherine, Jenny, and Vicky. And ladies, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. I can start with Beth because you're on my right. So.
Okay. Hi, I'm Beth, and I have a 18-year-old daughter who is in remission. She's been in remission for since January 2023, so almost a year and a half-ish. Her anaphylaxis allergens were cashews and pistachios, but we also treated other tree nuts that were in her sensitive column, as well as peanuts. But she didn't have to do like the typical peanut treatment. So, yeah, she's getting ready to go off to college in the fall, and I feel a lot better knowing that she's in remission. So, yeah, so that's us.
Nice. And next, Vicky.
Hi, I have a 12-year-old boy. We're from New York, and we travel to the TIP program to conquer his tree nut, peanut, and seed allergies. We're exactly halfway through, and we started when we started in 2021, and we're just moving along.
And Jenny.
I'm Jenny. My son is Kip, and he is 20. He's in college, second year, and he is peanut, tree nut, and some seeds. We're 4.5 years in, and we live in Carlsbad, which is North County, San Diego. And also my niece is almost 24 and just started the program. So I've got two different perspectives, two very different kids. They are going through the program.
And lastly, our presenter, Catherine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Rotigliano. I live outside of Seattle, Washington. My son Theo turns 5 in 6 days, and he joined the program at age 3. We're 2 years in and about 3 years left to go, and we deal with dairy, egg, sesame, a few tree nuts, wheat, salmon, and that's it. I always feel like I'm forgetting one because they keep shifting. Some numbers go up while most numbers go down, so it always feels like it's shifting.
And thank you for everyone who's just joined. Right now, we're going to go into Catherine's presentation. So. And please let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Okay, we ready?
We are.
So I was a professional chef since 2005, and the 5 years before my third child was born, I focused strictly on personal chefing in people's homes in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I got really lucky that I hooked up with this concierge doctor, and she sent me all my clients. So every day of the week, I had a different client, and I would go into their homes and cook all their food and fill their fridge. And the underlying health issue with most of these people was always food related, whether it was Crohn's or celiac or just food allergies or severe food sensitivities, or if they just didn't even know what their health issues were. They were always They always did allergy testing, and then they would get a list of 30 things they couldn't eat, go into freak out mode, not know how to feed themselves. And then that's where I would come in. They would hand me the list and I would go from there. So the universe almost prepared me for my son, because when he came, my other kids didn't have food allergies, but I already spoke the language. So it wasn't foreign to me. If anything, I had a harder time with his local allergist just understanding that I understood food. So they could test for more things because there was a reluctance. Okay, we can go to the next one. I don't know of the 21 people on this call where you are on your journey, if you're just starting out, if you're further out, but for us, we're at the 2-year mark, and this is our list. The first column is what we built up daily, and then we had the weekly, and then we had a ton daily, and this was a struggle for us. Theo was 3 years old. He had an aversion to food. He had a fear of food. We were working with a feeding therapist. Theo is in occupational therapy, and they're also trying to help him with some of these aversions. But that was a lot of food to sneak into a kid that hated food. He's been epied twice, and he doesn't trust most food. And I didn't do him any favors by constantly reminding him when he was tiny not to eat off the floor because he was going to get sick. Don't eat off the floor, you're going to get sick. Don't eat off the floor, you're going to get sick. I gave the poor kid a complex in an effort to try and keep him safe. I did this because a 3-year-old in my home dropped a piece of pizza. He picked it up, ate it, and then, of course, we had to take him to the ER. And after that, it was just easier to just get rid of all of his allergies out of the house, which my girls protested a lot too, but we just clearly couldn't keep him 100% safe. So we just had to get it out of the house. The reason I included this slide is to give those of you maybe early on in the program a little bit of hope. I just want you to see the difference between the first half and the second half. The first half is before blood labs. The second half is after blood labs. Once we got our numbers, we were able to move everything from the daily to now weekly. So most of his food went into pancakes. So instead of, forcing him to eat pancakes every day or waffles every day, now we just do it once a week. And we're building our new daily. And of course, that list will continue to grow. And then hopefully the next round of blood labs will just move it over to the weekly. We can go to the next slide. These are some of the ways that I hide food for him. I know a lot of these things come up often in the Facebook groups. People are always asking, what are other ways to hide foods? And these are some ways that I've done it: muffin, pancakes, waffles, mixing with store-bought frosting, smoothies. One of the other moms that's a volunteer here, she said they mix it into sausage mixture and then pan fry those into patties. I think that's genius. Chocolate coins is very common. Oatmeal's common. My son wouldn't eat most of those things. So for us, what actually worked best was I would mix stuff, the things that he hated. There were certain things that I could easily mix into pancake mix, but there are other things that just have a very strong flavor. So for us, lentil was always a problem. And if you've tried the lentil flour, it is very floral, almost fruity. It's really hard to hide, but I would have luck by mixing it in with sushi rice and then wrapping that in sushi wrap nori, because the nori is such a strong flavor, it would almost mask it. I will say, on a positive note, I stopped telling him foods were going to get sick, and I started telling him instead that this program is going to get him to food freedom. And by repeating these to him from the time he was 3 years old to today, he's a different kid. Something clicked in his brain about a year ago, and he started realizing that this is how he gets to be like his sisters. This is how he gets to eat at more restaurants and not just Noble Bird. This is how he gets to travel more by doing the program. So, today I just put his donkey milk and his frosting with mustard seed and sunflower seed and said, all right, buddy, do your dosing before we go to school. And he just did it. So we've come so far. I mean, there were, in the early days, there was a lot of tears on all sides, especially because he just wouldn't eat it. Next slide. These are, not all of you are battling kids who have the same food fears as maybe the younger ones. And so these are some ideas that I have of ways you could mix it in for your adult kids, or if you're in the program yourself. Some of these are, pretty simple: cottage cheese, yogurt, protein shakes. But then I thought of a bunch of other ones that might be a little bit outside the box. You could mix it with a vinaigrette and add it to a salad. A lot of these powders lend themselves really well and can be pretty well hidden in something like a salad. I think it's important to remember that they only expect 80% compliancy with the maintenance. So if you're putting in a quarter cup of mixed powder into something like a bean salad or a meatball mixture or whatever, and some of it gets left behind in the bowl, you're still probably going to get the bulk of it. I think that maybe more of us tend to focus on sweet, and maybe too much sweet can be overload for the kids. I know that my son struggled with the chocolate coins at the office because that's just a lot of chocolate for someone who's only 3 years old and maybe 25 pounds. So I think savory is a better way to go, mixing it with falafel mix or doing a savory biscuit or a savory scone. Meatballs, I think, is a great one. I have gotten into the habit recently of making corn tortillas from scratch. They're a lot easier than you would think. I think the key is just letting it rest for 30 minutes before you attempt to press it and pan fry it. A tortilla press is super cheap. They're like under $20 on Amazon, or you could probably find them at like a thrift store for next to nothing. You can use masa dough to make like a pupusa and mix the actual maintenance foods into the dough. You can make something like a crab cake. Follow a crab cake recipe, leave out whatever your kid is allergic to, and add the maintenance foods into the crab cake. Fold it into a guacamole, eat it with chips. Things that have very bold flavors can be a good way to hide it. And if something like, for example, if a roasted peanut just has too much flavor, maybe just leave that one out and incorporate everything else. The last thing is just dough, making non-dough or pita dough. Lots of different doughs, assuming you can have wheat, are really, they're a lot easier to do than you would think. It just takes kind of getting over that fear. I mean, I went to culinary school and I worked in the field for years, and even I had a fear of making dough. But once you start, you see that it's fairly simple. And there are really good gluten-free options as well. Next slide. So with tree nuts, I know a lot of us struggle with getting them to the right texture. We were told early on to use a zester or a microplane. I shave a lot of our nuts by hand, especially things that are oily like a macadamia nut. But what I have found is if I measure the nuts equal parts, so let's say if I did a quarter cup of pistachio, a quarter cup of cashew, and a quarter cup of peanut, which is what I do equal parts. I put it in a food processor, not the Ninja, but like an actual bigger food processor. And I blitz that, and they all seem to come out pretty much the exact same grainy texture. So it's less of like a mush and more of like a powder. So I've had pretty good luck with that, with mixing the nuts, assuming that you're serving. For us, it's easy because he needed a teaspoon of each. So I just kind of did the math on that. Next slide. So mealtime for us has been a struggle, kind of always. And not knowing what to do, I hired a parent coach. A friend of mine used a parent coach, had great success. So I thought, well, I'm desperate. I'll do anything. So we hired a company called Manatee. They're based out of California, but they do work in Washington over Zoom. And basically, it's just kind of like a life coach. And this is what I learned from them. We were making feeding time so stressful. Feeding time in our house was so stressful, and nobody was happy, and there was a lot of lecturing and shaming and stress, and just nobody was happy. So we started implementing really simple tools. Feeding time now is family dinner every night. We eat communally, we eat on platters. I know it's a lot of work. We eat family style on platters. Everything is on the table. We use really nice placemats and napkins. And my son insisted on a candle, so there's always a dinner candle. And the kids like to make seltzer, so we always have their special drinks. And I always make sure that there's one or two things that I know my picky kid will eat, but then I always try to encourage them to fill their plate with something maybe new. And we've been doing this for about 4 months, night and day. It has been honestly a game changer. He went from having maybe 4 things on his repertoire of dinner total to now maybe we're up to 10. It's been amazing, just not stressing and just calming things down. The other thing that we have implemented is we go around the table and we talk about the favorite part of our day. And it's amazing how often people's answer is this dinner. And even when we have friends come over for dinner, we make them participate in favorite part of the day. And usually those people will say, this dinner is the best part of the day. There's something so wonderful about just coming together. I think maybe we think it's not as important as it is, but it just brings the whole family together, and it takes away a lot of the food stressors. So I hope that helps with any of you that might be dealing with stress around mealtime. Next slide. So we cannot, my son hates lentil flour. That just did not work for us. So I asked if we could just do lentils. We were told yes. This is a product that works really well for us. You could turn this product into a scrambled egg or like a tofu. If anybody wants more help with this, I'm more than happy to help. You can soak it and then cook it with rice, maybe like 3/4 rice with a quarter cup of the lentil. It cooks up beautifully. Sometimes I'll put that in nori. But I think leaving the lentil flour and going straight to the lentil source was really good for us. He seems to hate it a lot less. Next slide. I have go-to products that have done wonders for us. This is one brand that we use a lot. This is the pancake mix that helped us get through the first year of maintenance. My girls love the cookies and they don't have any allergies. This is a very good line of products that I rely on heavily. Next slide. This is my all-time favorite cooking resource. I teach cooking classes currently, and I tell everybody about this resource. It's not so much a recipe book as it is you look up an ingredient and it gives you a list of what goes well with it. So if you're the type of person who does a good job kind of throwing meals together and don't necessarily need a very strict recipe to follow, this is a really good way to get some ideas. These are all scientifically proven ingredients that work well together. So I highly recommend this book. I use it all the time, especially when I'm trying to think of a way to hide something. I'll look up that ingredient and see what it'll go well with. Next slide. So I use this particular blog a lot, this Loopy Whisk. She has a lot of really good gluten-free recipes and a lot of gluten-free plus vegan recipes, and her website is very well, it's just well put together and easy to follow. And the book on the right hasn't come out yet, but I really thought I should put it on here as a potential resource for people like us who are always looking for ways to substitute ingredients in and out of recipes. Right now they're doing pre-orders, but I thought I would share that. I believe this concludes my presentation. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can put in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask some questions. I thought that was very beautiful. I loved the part about mealtime. I thought that was really beautiful. I know in my household it's like very rare we do that nowadays, especially since all of us have gone a little bit older. But I think that's really amazing that you do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
If no one does have questions, and don't be shy, feel free to put them in the chat. But I do have some people who did send in questions by email, and I'll be happy to go over those right now. And if you do have any questions, feel free to interrupt me and ask yourself. Okay, so the first one is from Carly. She says, my son is near the end of his treatment and it has gotten much harder with worry. I would love to hear tips on how to get to the end of the program and reduce worry about dosing and even maintenance. And it would be great to hear positive experiences and success stories. Would like to take that one.
I can take that one if you want.
Yeah, please.
Or at least start if someone else has other things to add too. So, like I said before, my daughter is about 1.5 years out of the program and is in remission. And I can tell you, I still worry sometimes, in all honesty, although she has had the best experience in the program. She has had only one little blip way in the beginning. And it was probably the best thing that happened to us because it showed us that she can have a little reaction, and we had support from the clinic, and it was a very positive experience, if that really makes sense. But I would just say that for the tips, and I just keep reminding myself, and I still do this, like I said, like I just gave her I give her little maintenance doses that she still takes in her lunch, and she's at school when she takes them. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that makes me so nervous here. I'm sending all these nuts to school. But I just constantly remind myself, like, this is what we've done. This is, what we've worked for. And there's nothing in her past since we started the program that would point us to this not working. And I just keep telling myself to trust the program. We've had such great success so far. And I think it's normal, personally, to worry about this. I mean, again, we dealt with her food allergies for 12 years before we started the program. So it's hard for me. It's hard for her to all of a sudden now switch from, you can't touch these things, you can't go to these restaurants, and then all of a sudden now it's like, yeah, here, eat all this food. So I think for us that it's been a slow process. And my husband even joked with me as we were getting into the program, and he said, how are you going to be once she's done? Are you going to be able to let go of always having to check labels and talk with people? And that's a learned behavior that I have done and advocated for her since she was 4 years old. And that's a long time. So it is a process. And there was moments where it is harder than other times, but I just always kept telling myself to trust this program and trust the process. And there has been nothing that has showed us that I should be worrying about it. But I do think it's normal and understandable because we've been told and we've had to do these things for so long for some of us that you can't just switch it off, if that makes sense.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
I got something to add to that.
Okay.
I was going to say, I don't remember if Carly's question was your kid is nervous or you're nervous, but I'm going to answer the kid being nervous. My son is super laid back and never had any anxiety with this, but my niece, who just started, and she's 23, she didn't start until now because she has so much anxiety around food. And what I found was, moods are contagious. Moods are always contagious, good moods and bad moods. And my sister, her mom, is also an anxious person and very anxious about all of this. And so I go with them to all of their programs. And I usually wear some like silly t-shirt. I mean, she's 23, and it's like, I get on the equipment with her and we have such a laugh, and I'm like riding the little tiny climber and she's riding the bike. And I just find that me being there, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying the whole concept of bringing someone with some different energy really calms her down. And I can just see my sister, even in the car ride there, I'm thinking, what are you doing? She's picking up on your mood. So I would say if you tend to be anxious, that's okay. We all have anxieties about certain things, but maybe bring someone who helps calm your kid down. If it's a friend or a family member or someone else, I just find that that can make such a huge difference at the appointments, at least.
And I feel like that's definitely connected to what Catherine was saying in her presentation about how when she started changing the way she was speaking with her son, the behavior also changed in her household. So that's really cool. It's definitely has a lot to do with also their environment and how we treat them and how we approach their situation. How long did it take for both of you to see changes in both of the kids and like their behavior?
I would say my niece is so new. She only started in October. And I think the biggest thing for her was once she started to see that the program actually works and she was not being introduced foods that were going to hurt her, she got much more comfortable. So she's out of state, so she comes for the big multi-day appointments. But I can just feel it. I'm so sensitive to moods, and I can just feel that she calms down when I'm there. So yeah, so I think right away I could tell that I needed to, not only am I doing the program with my son, but now I feel like I'm doing it with her. And so I just accept whenever she's doing this every quarter, I'm going to go to all of the appointments with her because I can just feel it right away. So I think that's been a huge help right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. And Catherine, how long did it take for you to see a notice or notice a change?
It took about a year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Different ages too. Different ages too. Yeah. All right. And I have some questions in the chat from Karen. She said, any suggestions for things to mix pine nuts with for maintenance? My daughter needs 30 pine nuts in the AM, and she can't stand the flavor or smell.
I mean, I hate to repeat myself, but I would honestly just put it in like a masa tortilla mixture. The flavor of that corn is so strong. It will hide, and you can add spices to the mixture that they'll tolerate: paprika, cumin, coriander. Make it so bold that it just covers it up, and then you can use that tortilla to put anything in it. If the kid can handle flour, you can also do like a flour tortilla or like a non-dough or something, just to kind of get away from whatever you're normally putting it into.
Oh. All right. And then from Jennifer, she said, I was curious if anyone has or had young kids hiding or pretending to doze or eat maintenance food and how to address it.
We've had that. We've had it where he's like, I ate it, and then you find it in between the couch. So we just don't trust him. We make him do it at the table. We watch him like a hawk. I have heard that this is a bigger problem with teens, that they say they've eaten it and then they haven't. One of the doctors told us that, and it kind of made me glad that we got in when we got in, because I kept telling myself, maybe if we waited longer, it would be easier. But it just feels like the answer is just power through, get it over with as soon as possible. But yeah, never try. I mean, even grandma, we would hand her the baggie and say, make sure he eats it. And then, like, okay, so we just don't trust anybody. We just we watch him very closely.
Then I have another one from Prashant. I hope I said that correctly. She said, any tips on how to continue this in college? Our daughter will be going to college next year, and we will not be done with the program before then.
I can speak to that. So my son is a sophomore in college. He lives 5 hours away. So he had a couple blips with peanut. That was kind of his final thing. He's very, very good with any medicine or dosing. He's always just really on top of it. But his social life and getting sick constantly were a huge challenge. And he rushed to fraternity. I do have to say, we knew he'd be drinking when he was a freshman, whether we liked it or not. And the tip has never been judgmental. They've never said, why are you drinking? You're not old enough. It was just like, okay, let's talk about how to, how to incorporate your dose into whatever you're doing. And so it was really hard. I still send him away with some, I make these like chocolate patty coins things, and I send it to him for his maintenance, but he's really good about it. But it was a lot of pausing, constantly being sick, constant pausing. At one point, we just kind of like held steady for Peanut for probably 6 months because he would have like reactions, because I think he probably wasn't sleeping enough. He was stressed, then he'd get sick and not tell anyone. He'd just take Advil and then forget that he was actually sick. So that was challenging, but it also has been so worth it because, last summer when he was 19, he went to Europe for the first time, and it was with friends, and he could safely eat, in Europe. So it is definitely challenging with the getting sick and everything, but I haven't had to be on the phone with him or FaceTime and say, let me see you take your dose. He's always really good about it.
And then another question that I had from the emails was, I have a question and I hope the group will be able to help with it. I'm looking for different and interesting ways that I can incorporate the maintenance and treatment foods into our daily routine. For example, I've tried a batch of waffles. It was quite labor intensive and I can't say my son loved them. What are other parents trying for maintenance and dose foods? And I think Catherine might have answered that one within her presentation already, but if
Okay.
anybody
But do
does
any of
have
you have other thing? Yeah, other
I
other
can
ideas?
say, I can add to this. We tried muffins, waffles, pancakes in the beginning. Everything was like, just felt like it was too much volume for him, and he was, he was not a big eater, didn't have a big appetite, so would gag in the morning for breakfast every day, until we finally found our savior, which was a cookie. I make like a homemade chocolate chip cookie dough and keep it in the freezer in like, sometimes portioned or in a roll or something. In the morning, cut up a piece and melt it a little in the microwave, soften it in the microwave, add all his nuts that he needs for that day. And to him, it's a treat because it's a nutty cookie. It tastes good. It's not, I think just the texture of all the muffins and the pancakes and the waffles, the soft foods, was just not for him. And now he's got this chocolate chip cookie that he eats along with his breakfast, no problems, and it's just been so much easier.
This one is actually an internal question. So one of our staff members wanted to ask, what has been your biggest win or happiest moment since joining the TIP program?
I can say that we went as a family to Costa Rica this past January, which we like to travel and we travel a lot domestically, but we've gone a couple international places, but I've been very specific because I want them to have good health care. I don't want to have a language barrier, just because if something happens and I can't communicate with them what's going on. And so it was amazing. I mean, we never would have even thought of taking that trip as a family. And I didn't mention in the beginning, but we have 4 kids, and the one that is in remission is our oldest. And so it was just so amazing for all of us to go. And we've also taken a cruise since then, which we did actually take a cruise while she was in treatment. And then we also took one when she was almost done. And then we also went to Costa Rica because we have saved up a lot of vacation stuff because we didn't take as many with her. So it's been really great. And I think for us as a family, that's been probably the best to come out of this, is that we can safely do those things without worrying. And I didn't mention anything. Every time we sat at a restaurant in Costa Rica and someone would say, are there any food allergies that we have to be respectful of? And I was like, nope, not at all. And it was the best feeling ever. So I would say that for us.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing. And then if anybody else, both volunteers and just other parents, have any positive things you want to say, I would love to hear them. One of the things I've heard a lot speaking with the volunteers is all the stuff that you guys do to advocate for your children in your own homes or trying to find, the safest spaces for them back at home. So one of the questions that I had was, what are some tips for advocating for your child's needs outside of the program that other people could also adapt back at home?
I can jump in if nobody else. Like I said before, my daughter was diagnosed when she was 4, and we didn't start the program until she was probably 15. And so for us, I mean, I had to advocate since she was little. She was the first one in our school district to have a food allergy. When I brought it up to our elementary school, they really didn't have any idea. I was learning. She was like, we were all learning how to do this. And I feel like for us, it was just something that we were able to kind of do together and advocate. And I had to learn everything. I mean, I read everything. I researched things. I was the first one in our school district to have a 504 plan for anaphylactic food allergies because our school district said, well, we don't need that. We can just do a health plan. And I said, well, I don't think that's enough. And here's why. I've talked to other school districts. And so I feel like advocating was something that we have done for so long in so many different ways, whether it was with sports teams, and she's a dancer. So, going to dance competitions, trying to make sure that she would be safe there, and talking to the other parents and other dancers to make sure that she could be safe in those environments. I think us as food allergy parents, we have to advocate for our kids in so many different ways, constantly, all the time. And it has shown my now 18-year-old how to do that. In every single parent teacher conference in school, in high school, the teachers were like, wow, she's a really great advocate. If she doesn't know how to do something in school, she's the first one to raise her hand to say, hey, I need some help. I don't understand this. And I really think it's because we've advocated for her whole life. And as she's grown up, we've taught her, this is how you have to speak up for yourself. So I think it has shown her some skills that she can take beyond the food allergy community, for sure.
I would add that I got involved with the PTA with my girls' schools, and even though my girls don't have allergies, I've tried to implement allergy stuff, kind of trickled in, whether it's for the teachers specifically, for the staff, or whether it's for, like, we do a trunk or treat, and this year we incorporated the teal pumpkins and non-food items, and it's just people are more than happy to contribute and do it. It just needs someone to speak up and say it, and they're a lot more likely to accommodate if you're on the PTA and you suggest it, versus like maybe an outsider who requests it. I feel like there might be a little bit more hesitancy that way. If someone's not in the best mood that day, they might say, well, I'm not taking on the extra work. But if I'm saying, I'll go to Target, I'll buy the teal, whatever, I'll pick up non-food, there's a lot less, I think it's just made things a little bit smoother. My son doesn't even go to the school yet, but he will in 2 years. So why not already have that kind of as part of the norm?
And I have a question from Jen. She says, to the parents of teen girls, did anyone notice an increase in reactions or any other issues during their daughter's menstrual cycle? I'm concerned about being able to differentiate between cramp pains and dosing reactions.
So I think I might be the only one with the girl who's old enough for that. So to that question, I would say we really haven't had many problems with that. The one reaction that my daughter had was stomach pain soon after a dose. That was very soon when we first started the program. And I was on the phone with the provider, honestly, within minutes of realizing that she was in some distress. And she is tough as nails, this one, and she was really not feeling well from it. So I knew it was something I needed to escalate right away. And I called and I was able to get on with the provider very quickly. And it like really, they talked me through everything I needed to do. And then they said, I will call you back. If you don't call me back, I will call you back in 30 minutes. And I, in my head are thinking, oh, okay, sure. You know, it's 9 o'clock our time, which is different, you know, because we're in Wisconsin. And so sure enough, 30 minutes later, I got a phone call to check in, see how she was doing. And by then it had subsided, but I would say now that that was like the one time that where, and it didn't honestly even cross my mind. She had just taken her dose, maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes before that. It didn't even cross my mind that maybe it could be menstrual cramps. It was, you just know for me, I knew it was a reaction. And, you know, she does get menstrual cramps now, but again, now that she's getting older and, you know, she can tell, you know, she does get cramps every time and she doesn't confuse it. I'm not saying that you couldn't, but she has not, we have not had that problem for what it's worth.
Thank you. We have one last question before we go into breakout rooms from Karen. She says, how compliant do we have to be with recommended foods? And to answer that, I would say if it's coming from the clinic, I would take it very seriously. But if you are struggling with it or, you know, you have concerns about what they recommended, I would definitely reach back out to the clinic. I think that would be a much better question for them to answer. One last question. You're welcome, Karen, and everyone else who said thank you. So from C. Rhoda, she said, did anyone have kids that didn't have asthma but would have food-induced asthma? So asthma reactions during dosing. If so, how did you get past that? The inhalers helped but didn't work for us, so we have to put those foods on hold. Again, that, I don't know if anyone did experience that.
We did not. I know that my daughter had asthma growing up, but we did allergy shots prior. She didn't have asthma with dosing. She had allergy. She would get asthma from environmental respiratory things like, you know, all the allergens, the environmental allergens outside. I always joke like she's allergic to everything outside. And so we did allergy shots prior to coming into the program. And once she was fine with allergy shots, her asthma was gone. It was really just for environmental stuff, not for food. So I can't speak to that, but yeah, that's our only experience with asthma.
And we have breakout rooms. So we have about under 15 minutes left, and I wanted to get you guys into breakout rooms. So I'm not sure if anyone can tell me, is there a breakout room session on your left side? Or you could click a button, or is it on the bottom in the footer? Where it says breakout rooms.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so if you click on that, you should be able to join different breakout rooms based off of allergens. So we have cashews, peanuts, pistachios. Feel free to click on the one that you want to join, and then the volunteers will meet you in there. And if you can't find it, let me know, and we'll get that resolved.